I thank each and every member for having uh, uh, decided to spare your precious time for this. And I'm sure from the background I've heard, in Kannada there is a saying, "Tumbida koda tulkalla" anta. That means filled in pot never spills. So all of you are full of knowledge, but still you are ready to listen to others, which I think is a lesson which I have learned in the first few minutes from all of you. Thanks a lot. Having stated that, I really thank my stars that I call it as a peek into ISO 21000 and not an awareness program on ISO 21001 2018. As the title says, it is specific to educational organizations. Now, I would like to just, you see, the title per se, you see, the educational organizations, the second line starts continuously from here, but it was causing confusion to me. So I've dropped it to the second line. It says educational organizations. It covers two aspects: management systems for educational organization and requirements with guidance for use. And the abbreviation is EOMS. Now, in spite of all your knowledge and all, I will just assume that I am the authority on the subject and I'm teaching you. So please bear with me if you feel whatever I'm saying is fundamental or this is silly. So I kindly request you to bear with me for that. Now I would like to first say, in the year 2018, for the first time, an international standard has been established for educational organizations. And this is nothing new, because ISO 9001 is like a basic foundation, as all of us are aware, and everywhere we are getting into industry specific standards, and this is also one of it. But what triggered this? So I thought we should just look into it. Before we get into to the fact of finding out what triggered the establishment of the standard, I would also like to highlight that PC 288 is the committee which is responsible for establishing ISO 21001 2018. As you are all aware, ISO full form is International Organization for Standardization, and the intent of any standardization is a consistency followed by improvement, and hence the abbreviation ISO, as it is called as equal in Greek. ISO means equal. I'm not brushing into all these, you yourselves would be teaching it, so I'm brushing it. I mean, just going past it because I had thought of preparing it. Now, UN Sustainable Goals, they have, I would like to highlight this. These are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals established by UN for the country, for the world as a whole, which was established in 2015, and they want to achieve these things by 2030. Now, ISO as an organization, as we are all aware, it establishes standards. So now it has taken upon itself to check to what extent the standards established by them are in alignment with these Sustainable Development Goals. So in 2015, they thought, oh, the fourth one, the fourth quality education goal is education, and hence we should not be lagging behind, was the intention, and they established this as a standard. So curiosity took me to find out, because I thought our NAAC accreditation was well before this. Therefore, when I went, so pleasantly surprised that 1986 they thought of educational reformation in the educational organization, and in 1994 itself NAAC was established. But as you are all aware, NAAC is catering to higher educational institutions. Then what is the ISO 21000? What does it encompass? Whom all does it cover? When it has its aim at improving the processes of the quality of educational institutions to address the needs and expectations of those who use their services. If this is the intention, then is it also catering only to higher education institutions or for every industry. Before that, let us see the UN Sustainable Goals being one of the objectives which led to the establishment of the standard. They were also very practical in realizing that education is not only a basic right, but fundamental part of society. And hence the quality of educational providers is everyone's concern and not only the educational institutions. Hence ISO chipped in. Now, they were very clear that while educational organizations necessarily cannot guarantee outcomes, there is a lot that they can do to stimulate learning and ensure learners are getting the level of quality they expect. So they thought of developing this new standard. This was the thought process in 2017. Then they said, yes, educational organizations can never guarantee the success of its learners because there are a number of ways, there are a number of ways through which they can effectively meet their needs and contribute to better learning outcomes. Therefore, they thought this standard as a common management tool would help organizations in improving their processes and address the needs and expectations of those who use their services. Whose services? Educational organizations' services. With this in mind, they thought the standard would help the organizations to align their activities effectively with their mission and vision and enable offering of personalized learning, both of which benefit not only learners, but thanks to the improved process and the system over a period of time will also help the educators, parents, and other stakeholders who will reap benefits from consistent output. This was the intent with which the standard ISO 21000 was established. So we were talking about what all does it encompass. It encompasses from level 0, that is from yesterday sir was asking, Anganwadi, is it covered? Yes. All age groups, right from level 0 to doctorate, everything gets covered under the scope of ISO 21001-2018. It is not only the higher educational institutions, but also schools, colleges, Montessori. So if these are all the regular educational institutions, the other type of educational organizations like coaching, coaching colleges, tuitions, even they can go for ISO 21001-2018. So this being the scope is wide, applicable to every category of organization. They have built in requirements which cater to every level organization. Having stated that, as you are all aware, the ISO 9001-2015 established the high-level structure whereby the first 10 clauses are common, and accordingly even ISO 21001 has followed the same pattern. The same 10 clauses, the headings are the same, approach is the same, with specific requirements to educational organizations covering all the 8 levels. I hope so. Therefore, it becomes very specific and very relevant. Now, what makes this ISO 21001-2018 unique is, this is what I have felt, is the annexures which they have provided. Now, even 14001 provides, but it is more like more like examples which have been given in the annexure guidance. Whereas here it is very clear. It gives us clarity. It gives us the requirements to meet the requirements of the standard ISO 21001-2018. What is this? Annexure A. It says normative. That means as a rule, we have to follow this. What is it talking about? It is the additional requirements for early childhood education. Now, in the subsequent slide, when we see, they have used ECE as the abbreviation. That means ECE means early childhood education. For that, what are the additional requirements they have specified? Next, Annexure B. They say it is informative. The principles on which the educational organization management system is based upon. Annexure C. In fact, ISO, as you are all aware, ISO 9001:2015 is based on 7 principles, whereas this is based on 11 principles. Let us go into the details subsequently. Annexure C. Classification of interested parties in educational organizations. Even this has been given as an information to the implementers. Okay, I know who the classification of interested parties. Then how do I communicate with interested parties? That has also been provided. Okay, you have established the systems. Then there is an Annexure E which says, okay, let us have what are all the processes you need to encompass, and the measures. What are the data? What is the data you need to collect from each process, and what are the tools available to you for enabling improvement in the processes of the organization. Having stated that, Annexure F is a mapping document with the European standards, which I feel is not relevant for our implementation. And Annexure G talks about health and safety considerations for educational organizations. Now, why am I focusing on normative, the words informative? Because it says normative. That means it is for organizations involved in early childhood education. It is a mandatory requirement. But if I'm involved in colleges whereby they do not belong to this early childhood education, then this we can say is not applicable to us. Whereas, irrespective of the category or the level of children we are catering to, Annexure A to E, B to E, and G, those stated as informative becomes mandatory actually. That becomes normative. And hence, it makes it very important for us to understand what is the content in each of these annexures so that we can appropriately link it to each of the clauses as stated above, 1 to 10. Any comment, please? Okay, somewhere background, I think. Annexure A, this normative reference. You see, it is so, I mean, I like it a lot. General. It caters to level 0, which we have already discussed. There are so many levels, and ISO 21001 covers is applicable to any of the level educational organization. But if it is catering to level 0, then this particular Annex A is very much applicable. So what does it say? A1 general. You see, I have just summarized everything here with the headings, whereas in detail, each heading has been explained in the annexure. And when we talk about Annexure A, the headings are A1, A2, A3. When we talk about Annexure B, it talks about B1, B2, B3. Like that, they have numbers so that looking at the number, we know to which annexure it belongs to. So why am I focusing? It will help us in documentation also, so we can give references for the organization to know we have addressed that particular requirement. Having stated that, so the main objective in this education level is to contribute to the physical, emotional, social, and intellectual development of children. You see, this has now this gets linked to our internal issues, external issues, clause 4 and clause 6, because of the changed pandemic. How are you ensuring with these remote sessions physical, emotional, social, and intellectual development of children? So this is what we need to look out for when we are implementing it. So it talks about, you see, it has gone beyond principles. Let me say here, the organization shall foster play, autonomy to the child, affection, cooperation, creativity, and self-confidence, joy amongst ECE children. Now, this is going to be a real challenge in this pandemic situation where we are going to have remote sessions, online classes. In fact, here I would like to highlight one of the, you see, I don't have children. So I make it a point to talk to parents of children in my clientele to find out how they are handling this. You won't believe, one of the child, I believe, said, after each class, let us all break from that Zoom class and have our own WhatsApp group. We will talk to each other to exchange. For 10 minutes, we'll take a break and interact. I thought it was a wonderful idea coming from the child, so that there is a better cooperation and creativity I think the child has used. So like this, the school will have to think of and then come out with handling these things, and to ensure these principles are imbibed in every child. And the organization also will have to provide, you see, learning resources. Yes, we would have covered in 9001. Play we would have covered, but daycare, this is a mandatory requirement as per ISO 21001 2018 for the organizations which are into ECE, which we would not have bothered if the organization did not have it. Because in suppose we are not having this, in clause 8, while admitting the students, they say you will have to tell the learners and the beneficiaries what you can offer and what you cannot offer or cannot offer. So we would have only shown A and B to the children and parents. We would not have spoken about daycare facility not being there. In case it is not there, we would not have informed the parents unless they would have asked us explicitly. Whereas here, it becomes mandatory to make it very obvious in case we do not have it. And what are the alternate arrangements or facilities we may try to provide. Then competence of whom? Competence of the teaching staff, the employees who take care. Communication, it is both amongst all the interested parties. Today I would like to say amongst all the, this is covering, and there is a separate annexure for this, which it details about what to communicate, how to communicate, extent of communication. All these are covered in that guideline annexure. Now this makes it very interesting. A6, individual learning plans. That means the competency or the ability of the child may be anything. We are not, the standard is not saying that the like a machine output, we want all the children to have learned all these things. No, sorry. But do you have an individual learning plan for each kid? What is it that you're going to teach and what is the expected outcome? There should be a documented plan, and then plan, Deming circle, we are all aware, plan, do, check, act. This should be there in place for each individual in a documented form. Secondly, reception and delivery of the child. That means there should be a nominated person, responsible person for receiving the child. And also there should be communication between the person handing over the child, that is from the parent side or the guardian side, and from the school. And there should be communication about the condition of the child has had, who, what is the condition, all that needs to be communicated to the person who is receiving the child. And vice versa, while handing over the child to the parent or guardian. And the school should be aware who the person is going to be taking responsibility of the child from the school should be known, which I think is already being taken care in many of the schools. But this has to be documented. Now, sir, whatever you had raised, hygiene care. Here it talks about hygiene care encompassing every aspect of clause 7. Resources, all the resources. And it specifically mentions about pedagogical aspects also. All these, what is it? Because the child uses the playful materials, equipment, and spaces. So how do you ensure that these are clean and hygienic? So all these aspects have been covered under hygiene care. Not only that means when I said clause 7 covers everything like man, machine, method, material, environment. All that is covered in A8, which specifically it says all these should be ensured. There should be a procedure in place, and we should ensure compliance, checks, and analysis. Coming to A9, care in situation of illness or accident. That means if a child falls ill or has an accident, you need to have facilities in the first place to take care. Secondly, you should know who the treating doctor is or the parent's number, get this thing. And in spite of you administering the medicine with the knowledge of the parents or without the knowledge of the parents, because in case they're in a meeting and they've not taken the call, you will take necessary care and document, like in a hospital, what is the medicine, what is the route of administration, what is the dosage, and what is the next course of action required. All these needs to be documented, and it goes back to A7, reception and delivery of the child. While handing over the child, this needs to be communicated. In addition to all these things, A11 talks about behavior management and prevention of child abuse and negligence. So there should be systems in place to prevent child abuse and negligence. And in spite of this, in case it happens, what is the course of action which should be taken needs to be addressed. So in my opinion, Annexure A has really been wonderfully written, which was a real gap in the case of ISO 9001/2015, because it was a generic standard. This was left to the discretion of the organization. At this juncture, I would also like to highlight that when we go to clause 7, it talks about competence with respect to special needs. That means people taking care of children requiring special needs have to be trained, and they need to be oriented, and their competence records as per A4 will have to be maintained, and then they will be evaluated during the audits. I think I've covered Annex A. I will go to Annexure B. As I said, yes, 9001/2015 is talking about 7 principles, whereas this is talking about 11 principles. What makes it to have 11? Focus on learners and other beneficiaries. That means the focus is to, here, very interesting, is to meet learner and other beneficiary requirements and to exceed their expectations. Very nice, because no learner will have, I think, requirements. It is only the beneficiary, the parents, who will be interested in the child, what they learn and all that stuff. So they develop, they will have their own requirements, which the organization will have to meet, and not only meet but exceed their expectations. Visionary leadership is to engage all learners and other beneficiaries in what? In writing, implementing the organization's vision and objectives. Now, each one will have their own definition of mission, vision, and objectives. But this particular incident in my life gave clarity to me regarding mission, vision, and objectives. So I would like to share. But I'm not saying that you should be bound by this definition. You see, I was always confusion which comes first, mission or vision. Definitely, I was very clear. Objectives will be later. Now, when I was doing for a particular client, I was writing, as usual, the consultants will give their draft and they will discuss and then decide. But when I saw it was a proprietary concern, he said, my mission in the organization, he's a doctor, my mission is to provide specialized treatment to all patients having this problem under one roof in a cost-effective manner. This is my mission in life. I want to give all the facilities under one roof. So, and my mission is to give them the latest and this one, because my personal mission is this. Now, with that, to meet this mission of my life, I want to have a vision with long-term benefit and short-term benefits. I want to have a statement, and to meet this vision, I would like to have objectives. So this gave me clarity that yes, oh, mission comes first, vision later, and then policies and objectives. So I do not know whether it is given. You all might have had clarity. I didn't have, so I'm sharing it because that is the incident which clarified and gave me clarity. Having completed the second, visionary leadership principle, next is engagement of people. It is essential for the organization that all individuals involved in what? In delivering value are competent, empowered, and engaged. This is the third principle. Fourth, I think all of us are experts and will be giving speeches on this process approach. I don't want to talk, waste your time on that. Improvement, we know. Evidence-based decisions is there, same as 9001. Relationship management. This is very clearly, very nicely put up here as for sustained success, organizations manage the relationships with interested parties such as providers. That means I cannot live alone. So I need people. And if I don't maintain my relationship, it is going to be suicidal. So henceforth, this is a very good, another principle, which is also there indirectly in 9001 also, but this is not there. Social responsibility has not been covered there directly. Socially responsible organizations are sustainable and ensure long-term success. Accessibility and equity. This also is successful organizations are inclusive. I think Zandig is an example which I should give. You see, it's an inclusive growth. They have already, they said 24 sessions have been conducted so that there is no competition, negative competition, but let us all grow together by sharing our knowledge. I think it's a very good approach, and I really like that. Hence, I'm here with whatever little I know. Flexible, yes, transparent, accountable, in order to address learners' individual and special needs, interests, abilities, and backgrounds. So it's very important and very relevant to a educational organization. This I feel with the principle 9, though all are equally important. Ethical conduct in education. I don't think I need to talk much about this. All of you being there from the industry, you know it better. But it says where all interested parties are dealt with equitably, conflicts of interests are avoided, and activities are conducted for the benefit of the society at large. Very nice. And the 11th principle being data security and protection. That means whatever we share, the interested parties may be interacting with the organization, but they should do it with full confidence that whatever is discussed and the data that is shared is maintained, confidentiality is maintained, and appropriate care is taken, and no leakage takes place. So these are the principles on which the educational organization management system or the management system for educational organizations is based upon. Annexure C. Classification of interested parties. In my opinion, I don't think this classification has been done in any other standard so clearly. Whereas here they have very clearly given interested parties, stakeholders. Under that, 4 learners, other beneficiaries, staff, and again other. Under learners, whom do we mean by that? Who gets covered under that? Students or pupils, apprentices. Now, if I want to know who apprentices are, and what is the difference between the two, that also has been defined in the standard. In the next slide I have put it, I will just show that. Interested parties, other beneficiaries, government. Though I was telling Parmeshwaran sir that I didn't like the word labor market because they could have said employers, parents and guardians. All these are other beneficiaries. Staff, employees and volunteers. What is the difference between the two? Employee, that means volunteers here, there could be external faculty, for money or without money, expert coming and providing inputs. All those are also, those people are also considered as interested parties. Other educational organizations, that means my competitors, media and society, external providers like suppliers, shareholders, commercial partners like suppliers. Oh, sorry, here it could be MOUs you may be having with other organizations, those people, alumni. All these are interested parties. So it's very clear, I need not bother as a consultant, whom have I left out, given here. So I can just go about it. Now here they have told very clearly, students include any learner building and developing competence at the education organization, whereas apprentices include learners receiving instruction in the context of the workplace. Government, labor market includes employers, employer representatives and unions. Labor market, parents and guardians include persons who can make decisions on behalf of the learners. Employees, temporary, I think this I need not, because we have already discussed, so I don't want to stress much on all these things which are known to everyone. But this last few lines I would like to, educators can be employees, volunteers or external providers. Interested parties can hold more than one type of relationship with an organization. That means he can, a doctoral student within an organization can be a beneficiary of that organization as a learner. So he or she can be a learner, at the same time be an employee as a teaching assistant or researcher. So that means they can hold double role, incidentally, because of the various relationships they have with the educational organization. Here, yes, why this levels of engagement? I want all of you to focus on the, the lower part of this table. It says level of interest, high, medium, low and none. Okay. Then level of participation, involved, consulted, represented, checked. These categories can be interpreted differently in different national contexts. That is not relevant to me. Now, what is it that I need to focus? Involved, consulted, represented, checked. I don't know what it means. So I'm thankful to the annexure given and detail here. You see, it shows what do we mean by involvement? What does the standard mean by representation, consultation, checking? And they also give examples, which makes our life easy. But we need to address these. See, you see here, example 1, involvement. The interested parties participate in the process directly. That means parents, and example 1, parents and guardians can participate directly in the delivery of pre-primary activities within the organization. Even at the school level, parent-teacher communication is there. Even at the college level, communication with the involvement of the parents is there, because this colleges, yes, there are practical problems where the parents don't even bother to come in the case of colleges, which I have experienced through my clients. But that isn't, so we'll go to representation. What is representation? Nominated or appointed representatives of the interested parties participate in the process directly again. That means here the involvement, interested party themselves. Here, nominated or appointed representatives of the interested party, they get involved directly. Example, representatives of learners, student representative can be elected to university governing bodies by the learner body, educational organization. 2, staff can be chosen by a union or to represent the interests on the board of an educational organization. Consultation. Interested parties are consulted on the process, but do not participate in it. For that, again, example is external providers can be consulted on the design of books, other educational materials. Example 2, employers can be consulted as to that means the market where they're employing the students, future employers. You consult with them to find out the skill requirements before the organization designs a course. Taking here, very interesting, the organization takes note of the position of the interested parties, but does not consult, represent, or involve them. Example is competitors can be checked before announcing a new program or amending an existing one. The reasons are known to all of us. 2, prices of various suppliers can be checked before deciding on a fee structure by the educational organization. So they have defined what is their expectation when they say involvement, representation, consultation, and checking. I don't think any other standard has given so much of clarity in the expectation. Because they have told who the interested parties are and how we should have be involved with each type of interested party. And second, they have also told what generic communication is, targeted communication is, personalized communication. The communications are directed at all interested parties and the general public, targeted, specific group. Personalized communication happens two-way process between the organization and specific interested parties. Okay, can we have examples for this? Of course, yes, the standard is ready with it. What is it? Personalized, meeting in person, individual emails and phone calls, targeted, you can have even group, WhatsApp group, social media, targeted memorandum, internal magazine, websites, brochures, and pamphlets. Generic, mass media advertisement in the newspaper or TV or radio. You see, all these have been given to us ready to use, which makes it unique. Then it talks about what is the frequency of communication with these interested parties. It says consideration can be given to following factors while determining. So it does not say this should be the frequency with this type of interested party. It says before, when you decide the frequency depending upon the situation, but it gives you, okay, you can think of these points. What is it before introducing any new program or new product and services? Immediately after any changes are approved or issued that can have impact on interested parties, regular basis with interested parties or as said by the communication method, and following any complaint by interested parties. So these are the various aspects which have been covered. But last but not the least, D5 and D6. What is it? Feedback, which is common between all other standards and the standard 2. That means it says collect feedback. You decide the frequency. In addition to all those various communications which can happen routinely, you should also collect feedback and from the interested parties. And secondly, if there is any communication that needs to be recorded, documented, and necessary action taken if that needs to be addressed. And this is very clear, deadline for answering the interested parties if needed. That means whenever you receive a feedback, please decide within how much time you will get back to them, and so that loop is closed. And following a feedback, review of feedback, we should take action. This is a common requirement across all standards which we are all associated with. So I don't think I need to, but and here also they are demanding it should be documented, which is also the true fact in with respect to other standards. Now comes Annexure E. Here they have given processes, measures, and tools. They have made our life easy. You see, I have just put for convenience sake the 3 columns. But let me tell you, the column 1 has no relationship with the column 2 or with the column 3. There is no, it is only listing. They are independent listing. So here, what are all the processes in an educational organization? All these have been listed. And what are the various measures? Dropout rate, literacy rate. Literacy rate, when you are taking, when the admission takes place, what is the level of the students you are taking in? This needs to be, this is one of the indicators. Learner satisfaction, that is feedback. Attendance and or engagement rate of learners. With this way, satisfaction of other beneficiaries. Graduation rate as percentage of original admission. Length of time for completion of program, carry over in if it is there. Job placement rate at specified intervals after graduation. Tools, I will just cover this. Cost analysis, satisfaction, suggestion. Cost analysis is one of the important factors they have put here as a tool for analyzing complaint and appeal, impact evaluation, needs analysis, statistical data analysis, focus groups, overall level of qualification with respect to measure, publication and research output of staff. I think this is now, thanks to NAC, every organization is into this. Number of hours of continuing professional development, percentage of accredited programs, number of complaints, assessment pass rate, internal assessment, external assessment. So as we are saying these measures, we have to, now here, are all the measures mandatory? Could be one of the questions. Because tools are may use appropriately, but measures, the standard is silent about it. Let me make my point very clear. And only thing is what I did here was, to the extent possible, most of them were addressed. Wherever we felt it was not relevant and not up to the mark, we had made a note. Annexure G. This is the last but not the least. Health and safety considerations for educational organizations. The issue of health and safety is relevant and more so for educational organizations because we interact with industry and government. Why? Because to bridge the theory and practice. So HERA, that means in the working environment, what is the hazard identification and risk assessment? That exposure should be given. And why does it, and where should we consider this? It becomes a very, they have given what we need to consider here. First is empowerment and involvement. That is, communicate with all the staff, learners, and other beneficiaries to exercise their rights and to assume their responsibilities with respect to health and safety. First is that, take the cudgels, find out how you can contribute in ensuring good health and safety of all concerned. Next, adopting safe working, teaching, and learning methods and techniques that take hazards and risks into account by setting up prevention measures to eliminate or mitigate them. That means even if before I put up a lab or additional equipment, think what could be the hazards and take action. One good example where we find nowadays everywhere, which we might have, you see earlier all the tables and chairs used to be sharp edged. Now it is all rounded, so it doesn't hurt much. So even when we hit, so, and the way we place it, it should not cause. So by design, we should ensure that hazards and risks are eliminated or at least reduced. Then monitoring and adapting by encouraging the participation of interested parties in the various prevention strategies that are put in place. So that means here, if you observe throughout, it is interested party, so it was involvement of all the stakeholders. It is the standard is focusing on that. Now, education can consider how they will ensure health and safety of staff, learners during teaching and learning activities. One, as we told earlier, empower them, think of the health and safety aspects while designing it, and involve all of them in this one. That is the approach. Now you adopt safe working methods and techniques, identify various sources of hazards, assessment of risk, and use of prevention measures to eliminate or mitigate them. Adoption of practices that reduce health and safety risks for educational organization work, learning, and teaching situations. Allowing opportunities for employers as well as staff and other beneficiaries to exercise their rights to assume their responsibilities. Empowerment and involvement. Providing control measures to ensure proper assessment of health and safety processes. Provision of opportunities for involvement in and feedback regarding. So it goes back in the feedback form. You should also cover points on health and safety. The various prevention strategies implemented. So this ensures involving all the interested parties in the clause 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 and 10. Suryanarayan sir, nidya barta hai sir. So these are the various, this is the key factor of ISO 21001:2018. So it covers all the 10 clauses, and these annexures can be linked to 7, 8, 9, as well as 4 and 6. And principles can be linked to clause 5. Hence, and improvement also is covered in the process measurement and tools. So all these need to be knitted well and implemented to ensure ISO 21001:2018 requirements are met. So the uniqueness which I have found in this particular standard is 1 to 10 we as consultants will be able to handle, but how do we incorporate these requirements into these 10 will be the key factor for implementation, is my observation when I took up this standard. So all the clauses can be linked to one of the, all the annexures can be linked to one of the clauses in the standard, which is as per the high level structure. And one document can be prepared, one set of documents meeting all the requirements, which will be very useful to the organization. And in case of, in my observation, in the case of colleges, this could be the first step, which will be a confidence builder to go for NAC or NBA. They can go for ISO 21000 to begin with, because 90% of the ingredients are covered in this. Then they can go for NAC accreditation or NBA accreditation, so that the team is also ready and tuned to prepare records as per standardized formats, common approach. All these things will help. So with this, I think I thank you all for having listened patiently and also participated actively